T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to day one of TechFest, proudly brought to you by IT at Cork and Skillnet Ireland. My name is Anthony O'Callaghan, and as chairman of IT at Cork, I'm delighted that we are bringing this event to you, which aligned with our vision of a festival of tech right here in Cork. Cork is a vibrant tech hub, and tech is the largest employer by sector in the region. And this is why it demands a festival to celebrate the sector, and why we are so delighted to bring it to you this week. I'm also excited that we are the first organisation to be speaking to you this morning live from the new VE studio here in the Northlink Business Park, leveraging this state-of-the-art virtual studio experience, again showing the power of what Cork has on its doorstep. Today's theme is of connected cities. It's important and very relevant in these trying times. We now find ourselves physically disconnected from those around us due to COVID. So let's hear today how connected cities is now more important than ever and what we are doing about it. We encourage you to sit back, enjoy the day's events, and I'll now pass you over into the safe hands of our MC for today, the great Jonathan Healy, and our platform sponsor, Trend Micro. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. You are very welcome to day one of IT at Cork TechFest. TechFest is brought to you by IT at Cork and IT at Cork's learning partner, IT at Cork Skillnet. Now, those of you who have been coming to this event for the last decade or so will know that it's normally a small bit bigger in a very big hall with lots of chairs and lots of opportunity to meet people from right across the city and county at Cork City Hall. But yeah, things are a little bit different this year. I'm here in a green screen room and you're at home, quite possibly in your pajamas. And let's hope that that will make for a better event as we move on over the course of not one, but the next 5 days, because there's an awful lot to get through over the course of this week in an expanded event that quite possibly wouldn't have happened had it not been for the disruption of COVID. So we've got great innovation on display, not just in this event, but also in the topics that we're going to cover. As I said, there's the green screen. It's true, it is actually happening in this order. If you want to find out, by the way, what exactly is happening over the course of the next week, then you can visit techsummit.ie. That is the address that has the full listing of everything that's going on. As I said, 5 different tracks across the next 5 different days and workshops in the afternoon. So we've got an event like this in the morning time that has a guest speaker, and we have a panel talking about a specific topic, and in the afternoon then we go on to have a look at the workshops that will pick your brains effectively as we move on. Now, my name is Jonathan Healy. It is my distinct pleasure to be your master of ceremony for this morning's event. There'll be different people doing this throughout the week. I'll be back again on Wednesday, all going well. Just some useful tips and information for you so you can get most from this particular webinar. We are going to be recording this, so if you are a panelist and you're watching right now, just be careful. Someone will see this afterwards other than the people who are watching it live. We're going to run audience polls as well across the course of the event. And to do that, you need to click on the poll button, which is, as he squints at the screen, somewhere down the bottom of the system. So there's a poll that will be running, hopefully a little bit later on. I don't think it's there just at the moment, but we will be putting it live a little bit later on, and you'll have an option just to click on that and to take part, because this is very much an interactive event. And as we go on, we will take advantage of the fact that we can pick your brains and find out what you think of the topics that are on discussion. And then we also have the Q&A option, which is down the bottom of the screen there. If you have got a question for any of our panelists, our keynote speakers, or you just want to tell me how great I am, the Q&A is the way to do that. So do just click on that, and you will have the opportunity then to put questions directly to people who are taking part in this event. So It's all relatively straightforward. We hope you've had your coffee. If not, you can get a coffee from the kitchen next door, because COVID at least means we have been able to have caffeine on draft wherever we are over the course of the last 6 months, or indeed an eternity, as it has felt at times. But the most important thing is that we are evolving with this particular crisis, and we are going to come out the far side in a stronger way. And technology, boy, has that played a huge role in how we have dealt with this crisis, and how we have realised that it was better to have COVID-19 in 2020 than it was in 2010. So let's talk about our first topic. Our first topic is smart cities and IoT, the Internet of Things. The question we're asking today, are smart cities a smart idea? By 2050, it's estimated 66% of the world's populations are going to be living in urban areas. Now, the challenge will be supplying those populations with basic resources, things like safe food and clean water and sufficient energy, while also ensuring overall economic, social and environmental sustainability. So we must design our smart cities with a citizen-centric approach so that genuine human benefit can result and cities remain places to live as well as work. And that's all a good idea, but what we're going to talk about today is how we can leverage digital technology to deliver positive impact to urban regions. It is happening. I mean, the key is in the word internet, the wild west of the technological world, where anything possibly goes at any particular time. How do we make sure that we get the smart cities right, that we've got cybersecurity embedded at the heart of it, that we don't overwhelm the consumer who may otherwise be willing to embrace this technology? So our first speaker founded a company called Elan Technologies, which he sold in 2003 to Sita.aero. He also worked with Car Trawler for about 14 years. It was the world's largest mobility marketplace for airlines and led to 2 successful LBOs for the business. And in the last 3 years, he has been having the crack, trying to work out how we can deliver things via drone with his new company, Mana, which is promising to revolutionize not just the world of food, but also the world of pharmacy delivery, making great promises about delivering things to your house in under 3 minutes. I'd like to introduce Bobby Healy from Mana Drone Delivery, who's with me now. Bobby, good morning to you, sir. Nice to talk to you again. The last time we were together was in a big room with loads of people. Do you remember when we used to be able to do things like that?
I do. Human beings. Yeah, I was never very comfortable around them. We're better off here. Much safer.
Much better. I mean, I commented when I was looking at your screen earlier on, it looks like you've got the Starship Enterprise behind you, but that's actually one of your drones, isn't it?
That is, yeah. It is, and it's big enough to fit a human head inside, for those wondering, scale-wise.
Just to clarify, you're not delivering human heads. I mean, we're not at that level of dystopian disaster just yet.
At some point in the future, head transplants will be available. If Elon Musk figures it out, and I'll be very happy to deliver them.
No better man. Bobby, we're going to let you do your presentation. If people have questions for Bobby Healy, do drop them into the Q&A and we'll come to them a little bit later on. But Bobby, for now, it's over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan, and hello, everybody. So for those living under a rock for the last 6 months, I'm building a drone delivery as a service business. So I'll tell you a little bit about, first of all, me, background, that Jonathan already kind of covered, and then I'll go into what's behind our plans with Mana. And so I'm a technology person, I'm a programmer, still am, very much hands-on tech, and I like to build, as you probably know, technology businesses. Mana is now about 3 years from conception to where we are today, and it is what it says on the tin. It is drone delivery. So I'm going to show you briefly a video that the BBC shot to cover our Project and Money goal over the last few months, and that'll give you an idea what it is. So apologies in advance for the usual Zoom jerky video. I'll just show you this video and then I'll talk a little bit more about it.
The village of Moneygall is 140 kilometers southwest of Dublin and the site of a proof of concept partnership between drone company Mana Aero and the country's health service executive. Mana Aero are already testing essential food deliveries from this service station. But now with the coronavirus lockdown, they have shifted their attention to medicine.
Hello, Dr. O'Reilly.
The new service starts with a GP video consultation.
A cough bottle for that.
The doctor sends a prescription by email to a nearby pharmacy.
And they're going to deliver the drugs back to you by drone delivery.
Okay, no problem.
The medicine is attached to a drone and is transported to the patient's door. In this case, people who are currently self-isolating.
I'm 70 years of age and we're told to stay in. So we've stayed in, we've never gone out anywhere. Oh sure, it's absolutely brilliant. I thought I'd never see the day that there'd be such technology that I wouldn't have to be driving into town and back home to get my medicine.
So that's Fidelma. Fidelma is one of the residents of Moneygall and kind of underlines the use case for COVID lockdown response with drone delivery. And if I take you back to the original concept and planning, like any ideas person that's also in technology, you go through a lot of ideas, some crazy, some sober, and most of them you go through a space or you get to a point where you kill them yourself because they just don't practically work. And drone delivery is probably as crazy as you could imagine. There's been stories about it for a long time, starting off on Amazon, and you know, everyone's been kind of treating it like a bit of a circus, not very real, and possibly or likely never to happen, like landing on Mars. But actually, you know, the first idea for me was around simply a bag of chips app. Hit a button on your phone, get a bag of chips in 3 minutes. That's as simple as it was. And we actually built that software using an off-the-shelf drone just to see what the technology would shape up like, or how difficult it would be, or how practical it may or may not be. And pretty quickly realized that, you know, actually drones can do a much better job than a person in a 3-ton car using the roads to carry lightweight parcels around the local community or the suburbs. And when we started to think about what that might mean as a core technology wrapped up in a commercial business, it very quickly became food delivery and supermarket delivery. So, you know, it got quickly to, look, why do people get into their cars after they've gone home from work or after their dinner and they're taking a rest? What is it that puts them in their cars going back out to local retailers or local producers? And it's mostly the fact that delivery is not available in 70+% of the rural and suburban areas of the country, of any country for that matter. And so people get into their cars to bring things around, and where they don't get into their cars, they're using online food platforms or online food or grocery delivery companies to deliver for them. And both options involve a 150 or 200 pound human being controlling a 3-ton car at 50 to 80 miles an hour on the roads that are already congested, burning fossil fuels, producing CO2, producing a really shitty consumer experience that may result in your chicken chow mein being anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. It may or may not be hot. The person may or may not have COVID when they arrive at your door with the product, and they will most definitely look for a tip, and God knows what else, what other invasions of your privacy will be involved. And so we concluded quickly that drones would be not just practical in terms of technology-wise, very, very doable, but also in terms of consumer experience, as crazy as this may sound, a far more practical and acceptable way to receive products from your local community. And you know, this took a lot of convincing of a lot of people to sell that dream. So I personally funded the business for the first year, and we built a proof of concept. And the proof of concept essentially was a drone, not terribly unlike the one behind me, but a simpler drone with less reliability systems on it that would functionally do what we needed. So we built a drone in about 12 months that would fly about 4 miles, would carry about 2 kilos, and would deliver it to the ground autonomously. And that took 12 months. And that was just to to kind of get people to understand that this is quite a practical business that we were going to be building. And then concurrent with that, we started to look at what are the markets we will serve and how will we serve them, and then what's the approach to the market. So then traditional business planning comes in, and we say, right, well, do we want to build a consumer facing business and be managed drone delivery for everyone? No, because we didn't want to get into, if you're building a marketplace, particularly a logistics system, you don't want to be connecting to individuals, you want to be connecting to businesses. So early this year, we signed a deal with Just Eat. You may have seen, and our plan was to go live in Dublin, delivering a handful of food brands, so Ben and Jerry's and Camille Thai, and through Just Eat. So that was going to kind of demonstrate the whole business model from the top down, and kind of underline the fact that we're a B2B, ultimately a B2B delivery system. We are not really a technology company. We are not really a drone company. So we quickly moved to, okay, right, technology is doable, use case and customer fit and customer experience, definitely we feel that we're close to something that works. And then market strategy is indirect and B2B. And the reason, without jumping too far ahead of myself here, the reason that's the best way to be is because if you're running a drone delivery business, and if you're on the ground as we are in Moneygall at Supermax, and if we're powering Supermax with drone delivery, on the ground in Moneygall, it's not really physically practical for competitors to be all there with their own drone fleets doing things. So we wanted to wrap up one side of the production side of the marketplace, so the retailers and the producers of food, groceries, and so on, with a drone delivery stack to serve all channels and all partners. So when we power a Tesco, or we power a Supermax, or we power a Centra, then that drone delivery stack is available to everybody through an API. So it means that Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, and the restaurant direct can all use the same fleet. And why that's important is, just like an airline, a drone delivery company is capital intensive, and there's a certain amount of overhead in it. So you want your fleet utilization to be as high as you can. And so working backwards from the capital base, and that it's not a pure software company, or working backwards from that kind of constraint, you get quickly to, well, fleet utilization becomes important. And so we are a B2B channel agnostic service. And so that was the first 18 months of the business. And I was quite happy that, we built a team. We're 32 people now. We've a very strong technology team, not really a commercial team yet, because this is a very nascent industry in a highly regulated space. But I'm happy with the tech, happy with the position in the market, and happy with the strategy. So in the last 18 months, we started to raise venture capital to power the business. This is, unlike all the businesses I've run before, this one loses money, which is a very unusual feeling, and it will do for quite some time as it grows. So we raised money from US-based VCs, just over $8 million now, and that has allowed us to fully mature the platform that you see behind me. So what it looks like when you're at home and you're so I'll take you through our next launch. So our next launch is in Oranmore and Galway, and Oranmore is a population of between 6,000 and 8,000 people, about 2,000 or 3,000 houses, and we've done a partnership with Tesco, and we'll be flying off the roof of the Tesco building in Oranmore, right in the centre of Oranmore, and you'll come to the drone delivery website. You'll click on Tesco, you'll order one of 400 or 500 different Tesco products and pay for them. Give us your air code, and we don't need your name, we don't need your email address, we don't need any customer information, just your air code, and that's it. And 3 minutes later, whatever you ordered will arrive overhead at about 60 meters. You'll get a notification saying, we're here, look up, please get out of the way. And then we'll descend to about 15 meters. The cargo bay doors underneath the aircraft will open. We hover there and we lower the product down to the ground on a biodegradable linen thread. So you your Monster Munch, people have ordered those, your eggs, your rashers, your slice pan, you name it, and will be left on the ground in front of you in about, well, maximum flight time 3 minutes from Tesco Oranmore to anywhere in Oranmore. Average flight time about 2 minutes, and then the product stays outside of the aircraft for about 6 seconds, 6.5 seconds as we lower to the ground. We can carry between 2 to 4 kilos and about 15,000 cubic centimeters, which is about the size of a bit bigger than a large shoebox, to think about it that way. So that aircraft behind me is actually quite large. I was saying earlier on, it actually fits a human head in the cargo bay, just in case that becomes a thing. And yeah, and that's it. So the consumer experience is great. We will charge a delivery fee between us and Tesco for the privilege of getting things ordered, and we can deliver absolutely anything. We can deliver, as we have done, we deliver pharmacy in Moneygall, prescribed medication, over-the-shelf pharmacy. We've delivered eggs, we've delivered birthday cakes, puncture repair kits, you name it. We've been live in Moneygall since March, since lockdown, and Moneygall, very small town, about 800 or 900 people. 95% of the households in Moneygall use the product and have used it multiple times. So we know that at least in a small rural village in Ireland, we're very welcome. Once people get their heads around what it is, it very quickly becomes a very normal and very accepted mode of delivery. So Oranmore goes a bit bigger, and we'll probably do 100 or 150 deliveries a day with 2 aircraft. Those 2 aircraft, each one of them can do about 100 to 150 flights a day. That's the way we model it. It flies on pure electric, so no CO2 whatsoever. And that's funny, the result of that poll just popped up there. 94% of people would order shopping by drone. Thanks very much for that. I will be using that in my tweets. So just like the people in Moneygall, thank you for that. So we're fully electric. So think about drones, right? So first of all, it's just completely unbelievable until you ask people, why is it unbelievable? And if I did a poll now and I asked you, what is it you don't like about drones? What concerns you about drones? What people say is, number 1, privacy. Number 2, noise. Number 3, job loss, redundancies. And number 4, which is actually the one they should be thinking about, is safety, right? So if I go backwards, safety, we're regulated by aviation authorities around the world. So every country and every region has an aviation authority that regulates both the aircraft in terms of airworthiness and safety, and our operation in terms of an entity and safety procedures, training, all of that good stuff. So actually there will be, this whole industry will be served by the same industry that licenses and permits airlines and aircraft companies to do business. So the safety part is heavily regulated with a lot of oversight that should give everybody, particularly cities and towns, comfort that there aren't commercial entities taking risks or cutting corners to get there quickly. So the whole industry that we're in, which is, logistics, but also aviation, has this philosophy of crawl, walk, run, go very, very methodically and safely forward to grow. Mana now is at the walk stage, and we won't be at the run stage, i.e. scaling, for at least 12 to 18 months. So safety is there. Job loss, there's no question that cyclists that are currently risking their lives bringing hamburgers around busy city streets will lose those jobs. And that's a good thing, and I don't apologize for that in any way. I think the consumption patterns and the behavior of consumers, when you introduce a 2 to 3 minute maximum delivery time at scale in a suburban or rural community, will create better opportunities for retailers and producers in those communities. We think that people will purchase more. We think they will purchase more frequently in a more granular way, and there will be opportunities for smaller players to thrive in suburban and rural communities, and also on the edges of the urban centres. And so I think net, and PwC did a report about 2 years ago on the drone economy, just for the UK, and even PwC using macro data concluded that just by enabling the drone airspace, so the airspace below 150 feet, you create 600,000 jobs in the UK alone, and you add 1.9% to UK GDP. So very clear that the drone economy and what it powers is a net job creator, and in fact very positive for the economy overall. The next one is noise. So noise is definitely a thing. If anyone's ever flown a drone, a consumer grade drone, or they've heard it in the field, they make an angry noise. They're like a hornet full of bees. Not nice, and you don't want it intruding on your garden experience in the middle of a balmy Irish Sunday summer afternoon. Our drones do not make any noise. You cannot hear them at cruise altitude. It's actually quite easy to engineer a drone to be quiet, and it's just expensive. And so when that drone flies, it's about the size of a seagull at 50 or 60 meters. You cannot hear it. So that's one thing. And then when we descend to deliver, so we come down to 15 meters, there you can hear it if you're outdoors, but the frequency of the props, they spin at 50 hertz, means that the sound does not travel inside. So if you order something for delivery at 10 p.m. and your neighbor's children are asleep in their houses, they can't hear the drone inside. And that's actually probably the most critical part to get right around drone delivery, that it's not intrusive and it just fits into the environment well and doesn't bother anyone. It doesn't bother the birds either. They keep an eye on us, but they're not fazed by it. And then the last one, and a bigger one, and one that's an unfounded risk, but a concern anyway for the community, is what about privacy? You know, what am I doing flying over your house with a drone? Are you filming me? Are you taking pictures? What information are you collecting? So that's the biggest concern around our industry. And it doesn't help that many countries have used drones for intrusive purposes, for surveillance, for all sorts of things around security that they probably shouldn't be allowed for. And all we can do is not make the mistakes that big tech has made for the last decade or so, and behave. So we have no customer data. We don't know your name, your email address, your IP address. We know nothing about you. We have no recording equipment whatsoever. We do not take pictures. We do not take video. We just go from A to B. And in fact, we don't even know what we're carrying. I know that'll spur a load of funny jokes. But the fact of it is, we're a mule, and a very attractive mule. But that is what we are. So no customer data, no privacy intrusions. And in fact, the whole drone delivery industry needs to set itself up that way. A little bit on the tech, just I'm running out of time now as usual. I speak too long. A little bit on the tech. Inside the aircraft, there are 3 flight computers. Each flight computer can independently control the aircraft and has a different software stack on it. There's then a voting board that decides which one of those flight computers is best enabled to fly the aircraft. So if the flight computer goes crazy, or if it loses its barometric or gyroscopes or any of its sensors that it has, that computer will be shut down and the other 2 will take over. One of the other 2 will take over and it'll fly home. There's 3 battery systems, power systems on board the aircraft. It can fly safely on any of them. There's 8 motors instead of 4, and it can fly safely on only 4 motors. And every single cable is redundant. So there's a massive amount of redundancy in the aircraft. And that's all towards getting us to a 10 to the minus 8 of critical failures per operational hour, which is exactly the same level of safety as an Airbus A320 flying over your house. And we're there now. So the next stage of our business is go live in Galway, looking for a town. So as I said, Galway, Oranmore is about 7,000 or 8,000 people. Our next town then, we want to be about 25,000 people, and that will be in about 6 months' time. And then we prepare the business for scale. When we do scale, hopefully things go well, it will be worldwide and in multiple markets simultaneously. And I would hope to start that from about 18 months onwards. And that's it. That's what I wanted to say. I'd love to take questions if there's any immediate questions. Otherwise, we go to the panel. Thank you.
Okay, Bobby, thank you very much indeed. As always, I have more questions than answers for you because it's such an intriguing product. If you have a question, do drop it into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can get in there. And don't forget, we would like to get trending this morning as well. Let's tell the good people of Ireland just what we're up to here at TechFest. IT at Cork would love you to tweet. So tag with the hashtag TechCork20. So TechCork20, put up a tweet. Talk about Bobby's drones, talk about the topic of Internet of Things and smart cities, but do try get us trending a little bit later on, and more importantly, get your questions in. Bobby, are you surprised that there's still 6% of people who are watching right now who mightn't use a drone, and that there is a bit of reluctance out there still? It's not a universal acceptance of this, albeit a very vibrant marketplace. Let's put it that way.
I think that was just Alan Coleman voting against me there, and working ahead. Very competitive guy, working ahead of the panel. No, I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I'm pleasantly surprised by the result of the poll, because actually, pre-COVID, if you had done that poll, it would have been 65%, and now it's 90. It is 95%. If you run a poll now, you usually get 95%. And the reason there's negative is it's about the unknown. It's about those things I said. It's noise, privacy, all those assumptions which are unfounded, but they're there. And then there's the question of, do we have to be so tech? Can we not just go back to the way it was back in the 80s and listen to whatever band we listened to?
Oh, I'd love an old cassette. An old cassette didn't do anyone any harm.
I don't begrudge people their no votes. In fact, I would love if those people pinged me on LinkedIn or whatever, and I want to understand their no votes. And by the way, sometimes people accidentally hit no and they meant to hit yes. But I
yeah, but that's true.
I'd love to not challenge them, but just have to chat with them to see if I can swing it.
Okay. I have questions coming in, but given that there's a relevance to this one, a helicopter has just passed overhead here at Trend Micro, because we're very close to the airport here. Does that mean that me dinner would be delayed if you were delivering it here because there's other aircraft operating in the area, like safety being a main thing? If you're on a flight path, does that mean that manna can't get near you?
So two answers to that. One, well, firstly, no. So the first answer is drones have a ceiling of about 400 feet. So in other words, we're not allowed to go over 400 feet. General aviation, so helicopters have a floor of 1,000 feet, so they're not allowed to go below 1,000 feet unless they plan to land. So that's the first thing, is we're all separated vertically, which makes it very easy. However, ambulance helicopters, military, police helicopters will, at a moment's notice, need to take off or land at random places all around the country. And that's where the aircraft, where the aviation authority comes in. So they operate the airspace, and they actually can control our fleet and ground us. So they can hit a button and our fleets immediately either return home or land immediately where they are. And don't forget, our maximum range is 2 minutes to 3 minutes away from base.
And look, let's not forget, I only care about my dinner. I don't care about the emergency ambulance here. There's a focus on the consumer here. Some questions that have come in. Brilliant question. Whether dogs and cats get into the delivery first. What happens if Fido takes a shine to my chicken chow mein before I get a chance to run out and get the box?
Yeah, so that shouldn't be a problem. And we have high-powered lasers on board so two answers again. You can choose to have an unattended delivery where we just deliver the product and it's your problem, or you can choose to have an attended delivery. And if you want an attended delivery, we can actually check that there's no dog there. We can look for dogs with a downward facing camera, and we can look for people, and we can make sure that there's nobody around or that there's somebody around. That's your choice. Now,
having said that, right, so that's great because you're taking out Fido who might eat the dinner, but what happens if I'm out sunbathing in my shorts just as you're coming along there? Is that where the privacy element comes in? And is that where you're potentially exposed, that people may say, well, hang on a second, it's a great idea, but I don't want pictures of my pasty frame being distributed by a rogue operator?
100% people are concerned about that, but we don't take pictures, we don't take video. The only time we will ever use a camera is for safety reasons, to make sure that the area is clear. Turn the camera on, inspect, and it's not a human, there's no human. All of this processing is done on the aircraft with GPU, and there's nothing whatsoever recorded.
Okay, so unless you've got a pervy robot, you're going to be fine. Bobby, what kind of skills do you have to hire for programming and flying drones? I mean, the drones fly themselves, don't they?
They do, yeah. So there's no drone, there's no pilots, and they're fully autonomous. But in terms of to operate them, we like to hire people with an aviation background because the processes, the safety systems, all of that stuff require mature individuals. So we're not going to be hiring, untrained people. We train everyone, and everyone that we have operating the system actually has a drone pilot's license. You don't need that, but we still kind of take that approach, a safety first approach.
Okay. How many humans then per drone?
Zero.
And so how many, like, let's say that Mana goes hell for leather and you've got 50 drones operating off the Tesco roof and more. How many humans will be there? Is the humans' only responsibility to put the boxes in?
Yeah. So today we have humans everywhere watching everything. We'll have someone on the roof of Tesco, with 2 people on the roof of Tesco with binoculars, all sorts of equipment. We'll have people around Oranmore there at every delivery for arrival of the delivery. So we have people babysitting everything. We're far from in a position now, or would we want to leave the drones unattended. However, at scale, you'll have, the way you model it is one drone will do about anywhere from 5 to 10 deliveries per hour. So you model how many deliveries per hour and you multiply the number of drones by that. And then we think a good number is about 2 people overseeing 10 drones. And that's about the number.
Okay, I love the questions that are coming in now because they're my kind of question. Difficult. John Bergen says, how would you deliver to a block of flats or a high-rise building, Bobby?
The block of flats is easy. So there's a communal delivery zone. So we would take one car parking space or a green area, and everybody in that apartment block will have their products delivered there. Large buildings are much further down the line. So there's 2 problems with very tall buildings. So I'm thinking like 10 stories and above. And it's dangerous to fly a small aircraft beside a tall building because of wind patterns. So we'd never do that. And secondly, we've already been speaking to a number of construction companies around retrofitting buildings or providing in new buildings for delivery, vertical delivery. So we would deliver to the roof and products will go down the center of the building to different floors.
Okay, if you're living in the Elysian for now, you're going to have to walk to the shop like everybody else.
Yeah.
So the question here is, could somebody knock one out of the sky? So in other words, is there somebody below, like the malicious person with a shotgun, or someone else has some, let's face it, an evil superhero with an electromagnetic pulse gun? Could they knock it out of the sky?
100%. I mean, malicious people can do anything they want. They have that ability. But in the worst case, let's say, like, first of all, to shoot it out of the sky at our cruise height, very difficult. Really super difficult. Again, you'd have to hit the aircraft in multiple different places to disable it such that it would crash. In the final case, we have a parachute on board. So if you do manage to take a cannon out and take off one of the arms or whatever, the aircraft knows when it's in trouble and deploys a parachute and falls safely.
Would the chicken chow mein be all right in that scenario, or would we sacrifice it?
Might be in trouble. Might be in trouble.
And one last one, which I want to come to before we move on to the panel. Will this be a B2B, B2C service, or do you ever see it growing consumer to consumer? And if so, how do you ensure it isn't abused by sending deliveries which may be breaking the law?
Yeah. No, it won't be. We won't go business to consumer. We think that's a bad strategy for a business like ours. You just lose the efficiency of it. But there will be big brands that will use, like a Tesco, for example. I mean, Tesco are no fools. They know that the future is using the air for delivery for that, what they call small basket. So those are the big entities that will reorchestrate themselves to do a lot more than just their current product set. So if you think about the footprint they have in their urban fulfillment centers, they'll want to provide everything to the community, because actually, the big thing that you have as a retailer producer is the delivery network. The last mile is this, holy grail that if you can solve that, you can really be relevant to everyone in the community for so many more things. So we don't want to get into that. We let others do it.
Okay, brilliant. Bobby, do stay with us because Bobby's staying with us on our panel throughout the next little while. So thank you very much. Really, I love talking about drones. I had 2 small toy drones, which I lost within 5 minutes of putting them in the air. So I'm glad that there's somebody with a little bit more professionalism who's in charge of a project like this. Hashtag TechCork20, folks. Thanks so much for posting on social media. The tweets and the grams are appearing. Just one small request from me. If you do take a screen grab, please try and take one where I don't look like I'm having a poo, because there seems to be a lot of them on the timeline already this morning. Small request from me. It just seems to be a thing. If I'm on a stage far away, maybe that's what I look like the whole time, but it seems that this particular format is a little unforgiving. Let's bring in our panel this morning. We've got Alan Coleman, who is the founder of Sweeper. We have John Cormacan, who's the General Manager of Vehicle Engineering at Jaguar Land Rover, Claire Davies, who is the Digital Officer at Cork City Council, and Bobby is indeed staying with us. You're all very welcome, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. Just to introduce yourself to the group, if I could ask you, first of all, to tell us the 30-second elevator pitch of who you are and what you do. Alan, I'll begin with you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of Sweeper, and the dystopian world that Bobby has painted is going to require a lot more, a lot of us to manage connected devices, and our homes and our environment become more technically complicated. And so Sweeper's emphasis is on how do we deliver support when things go wrong, when things don't work? How do we make sure that we provide care as close to the moment of need as possible? And how do we make sure that support is personalized and effective for the person who needs the help? So Sweeper's whole mantra is how to find ways to deliver this technical support right to the moment when the customers need it most, and to do it in a way that they really understand and helps fix the problem as quick as possible.
I'm going to guess that you're going to become very busy over the next while as we become more integrated and there's more technology introduced to our homes. John, Jaguar Land Rover, we know the company, but what do you do?
Hey, dude. So I'm the general manager here in Jaguar Land Rover in Shannon. Actually, speaking of aviation, literally right beside the airport here in Shannon. So we're a brand new office, open actually just a couple of years. So we have nearly 300 software engineers, and we're a center of excellence for software engineering for Jaguar Land Rover, doing things like autonomous automated driving, connectivity, electrification, and shared mobility services.
Okay, and boy, have cars changed a lot in the last couple of years. Took a long time to get there, but they're changing really fast. Claire Davies, Cork City Council, obviously local authority. This is where government comes into this. What's your role as digital officer?
Thanks very much, Jonathan. My name is Claire Davis, and I'm working with Cork City Council looking at, I suppose, smart cities from maybe more of a citizen engagement and community perspective. We're also really interested in the areas of climate action, digital services, public service provision as well. So coming at this from a little bit of a different angle from the rest of the panel.
Okay, very good. We're going to go through various different topics. I suppose the first one and the most important one that I want to talk about is connectivity, because none of this happens without devices being connected somehow to the internet. John, I'm going to come to you first of all, because I mentioned the cars are on one heck of a journey. They're moving fast. They're going electric, but they're also becoming a lot more interconnected. My car won't let me hit anything anymore, which I think is a fantastic idea. But at the same time, getting that technology to work and to integrate with the internet is a different kind of challenge. How rapidly is the pace for that change, and what challenges does it throw up when expectations perhaps are moving a little bit ahead of the reality for the consumer?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, everyone has high expectations of technology these days, and in vehicles it's no different. I mean, one of the big things we're working on as a big game changer for the automotive industry is around software over-the-air updates. It's a very common practice for your phone, but not necessarily for a vehicle. So pretty much all the electronic control units in our vehicles and across the industry, we need to make them connected to the internet, connected to basically to services. So instead of having a car to go into a dealership every time, we can basically update those control units through software. And that's a pretty big deal, because we're not talking mobile phones here. We're talking 2.5, 3 ton vehicles, and we're talking chassis control systems, telematic systems, airbag systems, all that kind of fundamental safety critical components in a vehicle. So it's a much different, dynamic compared to a mobile phone or a laptop. So cybersecurity, functional safety are critical technology components that we have to take care about. But ultimately, it's a big deal for us because big problem for our industry is around warranty, and bringing a car into a dealership every time to fix it is not a good use of our money, and it's not a very poor customer experience.
But more importantly, it's about control and having to cede control. So in other words, the driver cedes control to the car because it trusts that technology, but it also has to trust that technology is going to work. I mean, we all know the videos that exist of the fella falling asleep driving the automated car. He might be comfortable enough to be asleep, but not everybody around him is.
I mean, this is where regulation comes into play. I mean, we can't just do what we want. We have technology, and most car manufacturers have technology to drive cars by themselves for many years now. I guess the big challenge will be to embrace that technology and work with regulation and various certification bodies to make sure it's completely safe. And that's happening in Europe, it's happening in Asia, it's happening in America, it's happening all over the world. These international standards are coming together, but they're not there yet in terms of a complete picture across the world. So that's a big challenge for the industry, is to really kind of bottom out on those standards across the world.
Alan, we have grown up, and our generations have grown up in nation states whereby we had individual regulation that was set by the state, or indeed perhaps a group of states that applied, and everybody worked alongside that, and that set the gold standard. The challenge with the internet is that it exists everywhere, a little bit like the pandemic. The pandemic is in control rather than the state. There's a real risk with this, that as some countries develop things faster than others, or indeed have looser regulation than others, that might then be imposed upon everybody. And that's one of the big fears that people have, is that the technology evolves faster than regulation can possibly keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the developments and protocols are driven by consumer demand, right? And consumers have very exacting expectations on things like privacy and how their information is being used. So typically it's in the commercial interest of most companies to try to adhere to draw a line as to where the customer rights trump, even if regulation hasn't caught up yet. So I think the regulation we have in place around GDPR and some of the regulation that's mimicking that in California as well, and eventually in the rest of the US, indicates that there's beginning to get good protections in place, but then also consumers are becoming more aware of their rights and what they like and don't like, and they'll vote with their feet and go elsewhere if they're not comfortable with the relationships they're establishing.
But having said that, the consumer sometimes doesn't know what's good for them. I mean, there's a very popular doorbell brand that is in use and great use everywhere, that is automatically activated when somebody kind of comes close to the door. At the same time, is that GDPR compliant? Is that going to work in the way that GDPR was designed? Sometimes regulation is a good thing rather than having everybody filmed doing everything at the same time. And the omnipresence of that type of technology does in itself pose a problem, doesn't it?
No, I agree. It definitely, there is a need for regulators to keep pace with the way in which the technology moves. I do think the fact that you're even discussing the fact that certain brands of doorbells can capture images means that it's in the public domain. So people who are thinking about buying a connected doorbell may now decide, because of the reason you just cited, that they'd rather not. They'd rather wait until regulation catches up. So,
but it's not my doorbell I'm worried about, it's all the other fellas' doorbells.
Yeah. Sure. And that does come down to government regulation. Like you can't, like I walk down the street in Dublin and get picked up by CCTV, and those aren't connected, but they are recorded. So it's an issue that's been with us for 20 years.
Connectivity, again, we're talking about connectivity here. There is an explosion in connectivity. I mean, I have a little vibrating phone in my pocket that's telling me questions are coming in, which is good, and we'll get to them in just a minute, so do keep them coming. But, this is a 4G phone. Apple haven't quite managed to get it to 5G yet, but 5G phones do exist, and there's 5G signal where I am right now. So that means that more and more technological advancements are going to creep into all of our lives. There's only one direction this is going, one would argue, Alan, and we have the opportunity now to get it right at ground level.
Yeah, and the pace and speed at which technology is advancing is accelerating. So it's not coming at a steady pace, it gets quicker and quicker. Like the adoption of technologies, whether those are over-the-top services or underlying network protocols, are all moving exceptionally fast. So you're right that it is an obligation on the regulatory authorities to ensure that none of this happens at the expense of people's privacy. But I think the foundations are there, and I think people's awareness is increasing. So I would be less fearful of the fact that these technologies are coming out.
Claire, if I could move to you, Cork City Council obviously has a huge role. It's a big organisation. You've got a lot of responsibility. You have to get people moving. You have to make sure things are planned in the right place. You have to do a lot. Technology traditionally would have been outside the remit, but what role is there for a local authority in planning this digital future?
I suppose from a local authority perspective, our role is there to serve our citizens and to develop the city. So I suppose like everything, technology is a brilliant enabler, and often can be a very, very appropriate way to solve a particular problem. If we're looking at problems like air quality, using IoT connected devices, it would be a great way for us to have more information about this. However, coming from the local authority perspective, we'd be very conscious of transparency, digital ethics, privacy as well. So it's about looking at trying to understand our problems a little bit better and looking at whether or not there is a role for technology. And if there is, then how do we do that in a way that is smart, sustainable, and I suppose citizen friendly and appropriate.
I mean, like that, the real challenge for you, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, local authority moves slowly because oftentimes local authority has to. How difficult is it to try and keep pace with something that where the trend might be set in India as opposed to Ballyfihan?
I suppose, look, in a way, do you really want, like, a city there, it's the great role of cities is that we can trial, we can test, we can pilot, but I suppose, do you really want your city to be moving ahead and installing tech before we really know what it's doing or what data it's collecting or how the data is being used? So I suppose what we would do quite a bit is we work collaboratively with different businesses, with different cities across Ireland and across Europe, and we're really starting to try to look at what's out there, what's being deployed, looking at some of the lessons learned and trying to then implement technology where appropriate. I mean, due to COVID, there's been a massive increase in the amount of online services, which is just trying to really move towards, I suppose, more connected services for our citizens. But we also have to be very careful that as we are connecting more and moving more online, that we're not leaving behind our citizens who aren't maybe as digitally savvy or don't have the same, I suppose, digital education as others. So we have to be really, really careful there.
Okay, Bobby, if I can come back to you, I mean, if nothing else, you're showing that your technology can be easily used by someone who's 70 as much as somebody who's 17. And obviously you're developing a lot of IoT tech as you're going along. How important is that integration for you, and knowing that the end user, the consumer, is the one who's going to actually have the power here, to have their phone, to get they'll know when the message comes in, they have to go out and stand under the drone as the delivery is made. I mean, the assumption has to be that people can use the tech before you start, because otherwise you're going to lose.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think in the last 2 decades, technology has been, largely for technology savvy people, and it's been hard to adapt. But when you're doing, when you're running a business like we are, we're going to change the fabric of the community. We're going to make everything available in the community to everyone. So that means it has to be comprehensive in who it supports. So as you saw in the video there, but there's a cohort of people in Moneygall that are 60 years up to 85 years old that have used the product. It's incredibly simple to use it. The key thing is to get them to adopt, is about getting them to understand what you're doing and to feel that it's beneficial to them. And so when we partnered with the HSE to deliver pharmacy, that was a critical enabler, because you don't make money delivering pharmacy. But it's an important value add or important thing that we brought to that community that made people think about it slightly differently than your typical, commercial opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, but when you put it that way, I mean, look, going back into a generational thing, anyone who is of a certain age in Cork knows how television changed when you got the multi. So in other words, you got someone who was piping an old VHF signal along a cable, a copper cable into your house, and everybody thought that was great. And then it improved because it went using fiber cables, and then everybody got the internet, which started as the low modem, which really didn't do much, up to gigabit broadband that we have in some parts of the country right now. Are you genuinely saying, Bobby, that this is going to be the norm within the next 10 to 15 years?
100%. I think it'll completely replace role-based deliveries, and it will be pervasive. And if you see in the video, that was real. That video wasn't staged. That was a real video. So the doctor is the local doctor that issued a prescription electronically to the local pharmacy that was delivered to a lady, Fidelma, that's 75 years old. And we've done that for the last 3 or 4 months in Moneygall. So we know that we're hitting the right notes. Now, in this case, Fidelma, she calls to place, her order at the local supermarket, or as you saw, she does a video call with the doctor. That tech is HSE tech. It's the e-prescription service. So we know that if we want the community to embrace us, and if we want to, really work with the community to change the community, we have to bring everybody in. And in order to do that, it cannot be some app-based thing, or certainly we work with Alexa, we work with apps and so on, but we also work with good old phone call.
Exactly. Well, if you can integrate with the HSE, there's definitely hope for you. They're not great on the old technology. 2 polls that we've been running in the background here. One says, does your company develop or use an IoT technology? Yes, said 53%. Not sure, 18%. No, not at all, 29%. Which, when you consider the audience that's watching right now, which is pretty much an IT-based audience, that the third effectively haven't even started looking at this yet, would make you wonder ever so slightly. And the other poll we're running was, do you think that connected devices are open to security vulnerabilities? Here's the problem. 92% say yes, they are. The 4% say maybe. The 0% say no, not at all. Alan Coleman, that's a good point to bring you back in on this. There's no consumer confidence that this mightn't be hacked. Is that just we're a little bit weather beaten?
No, not at all. No, it is a threat. Anything that's connected is hackable, like, to a certain extent. Now, it depends on how motivated people are to want to hack various things, right? But there's definitely been, and that's why in one of the developments of our connected homes in particular, a lot of operators are investing in technologies to secure the endpoints. So they're seeing themselves not just as a provider of the network and the connectivity, but also as a provider of value-adding services. And one of those services is cybersecurity. How do I make sure all the connected devices and services in my house are secure and stable and monitored? So those, in conjunction with the emergence of the threat, is the emergence of new business opportunities for companies to create software to secure all these end connected devices.
Hashtag TechCork20, by the way, if you want to quote us on social media. My good friends at SmartTech 24/7 always tell me that the whole point of having proper cybersecurity is that it's embedded at the heart of everything you do. Are you concerned, Alan, that again pace is the issue here, that the rush to get to market might outpace the need to make sure that cybersecurity is at the center of everything as opposed to trying to patch it on afterwards?
No, I wouldn't be. I think it is a heightened awareness of it, but I also think these are the kind of topics that get blown out of proportion relative to the gain and the value of the advancement of the technology. That, the prevalence of attacks on homes make good headlines, but they're not as prevalent as people would perceive them to be. And most people already, like, basic technology kind of hygiene protects you from most threats, like dual factor authentication and those kind of things. So,
but at the same time, John, I'll put this one to you, John Cormacan. Every time you have a new connected device, it's another possible angle of attack. And yeah, okay, you have to go out of your way and you have to have a particularly nefarious purpose to doing that. But at the same time, if you have an autonomous car, that is an angle of attack that didn't exist before. You'd have to take out the driver to crash the car. If the car is driving itself and is hacked through 5G connectivity, then I wouldn't fancy being in that car.
No, but it's the same point. I mean, I agree with that in here. I mean, there are many different attack surfaces on a vehicle, right? Whether it's a tire pressure monitor system or a Wi-Fi connection, or or even a USB plug-in dongle, for example. So it's up to us in the industry and across every sector is to make sure that we design and develop cybersecurity from the grounds up. You can't bolt it on afterwards and say, well, let's think about it later. It has to be a design feature from the very, very start. And yes, it's a challenge, but like anything else, it's something that the industry takes very, very seriously.
The smart city of the future, like the George Jetson city. I mean, George Jetson back in the 50s thought that everyone would still have their own car. How much of a challenge is it for the automotive industry that car ownership might become a thing of the past and we just hail a car whenever we want one?
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole big debate of the future in terms of mobility services. I still think people, to some extent, will want their own private vehicle in certain scenarios. In other cases, in urban areas, they might want use of vehicles in other scenarios. So it depends on the person. It depends on their stage in life. I think there's going to be multiple different new use cases, developed because of shared mobility services. So it's hard to see how it's going to pan out in the future, but it's definitely something that's changing fairly rapidly.
I mean, what happens if somebody smelly had the car before you? I mean, there's a lot of questions I would have before I would go into the shared car scheme, if I could put it that way. Claire Davis, for the city, for the smart city to be planned, like we've had great insight from the innovators here. What does a local authority need to make sure that it's part of the smart city? And again, that it is developed around that plan, the wider plan that you guys have in Cork City Council to make this a bigger, better city for everybody who lives in it.
I suppose from a local authority point of view, we do need to start looking at how we can introduce more digital aspects into like the larger plans, like our development plan, for example, or local economic and community development plan. So what we've done recently actually is we've developed a collaborative digital strategy for the City of Cork with external stakeholders from private sector, business representative organisations, public sector organisations and academic organisations, and also with input from our community bodies to try to develop a shared vision and roadmap of activities to help us start really planning where we're going to go, as opposed to maybe being more reactive and looking for the opportunities as they emerge. So I think that you have to have a little bit of both. You have to be flexible enough to look at a new opportunity that might emerge, but also you need to have a long-term vision. And so that's what we're hoping to achieve with this strategy.
Okay. Look, it links to that. If you're planning a new housing estate, then you're going to make sure that there's water that goes in there. You're going to work with the ESB networks to make sure the ESB gets in there. You're going to try and ensure that there's a public transport link that makes it habitable and people are less reliant on cars. Is there a role for local authorities in ensuring that there's proper infrastructure in terms of connectivity going in there? I mean, you've got still to this day places with no connectivity, and then you have others that might have 5 or 6 companies fallen off the pole trying to share. Is there a role for local authorities in that planning when it comes to looking to a smart city?
I think there's collectively a role for government and local government in trying to influence this. I suppose really the role of local government in terms of actually serving customers with broadband, that's not really our role perhaps, but what we can do and what we are doing is looking at our larger development plans and making sure that there has to be that you have to take in connectivity into account when you are developing a new business district or a new housing estate.
When it comes to R&D, Bobby, research and development was a huge part of your role. And again, you've jumped from industry to industry. You've been an innovator throughout your career. Has this been the most R&D you've put into something? I mean, by the sounds of it, it certainly has. And like, how much of that R&D is based on an assumption that other parts will fall into place in terms of smart cities and areas that you're going to develop?
Yeah, so there's a lot of R&D in this for sure, and there will be a lot more because we're far from finished. What are we depending on? The nice thing about using air is that there's already systems in place largely for airspace management and traffic routing and protecting the airspace and so on. It's for us about integrating with those systems. So it's really all in our hands. So we're not like autonomous cars may or may not need a ton of infrastructure on the ground to help them find their way around. Autonomous drones have a much easier job, and it's really just about scheduling 3D airspace and communicating that to third parties. So yeah, I mean, our effort now is less R&D and more about integration with airspace systems around the world rather than relying on other people to provide any infrastructure.
Yeah, and in that context, is 5G helping you, or do you see yourselves using that?
Well, yeah, our aircraft has 2 LTE SIMs on it now, so we have 2 SIMs, each with 3 operators loaded and failing over across them. But we don't really need low latency, high bandwidth. What we need is reliability and redundancy. And so, to be honest with you, you have that with the bulk of networks. You can be a 98% whatever coverage. And so long as you use multiple networks, you can get a lot of coverage. But in aviation, which is what we're in, you're not allowed to rely on anything. So even if 5G had a promise of redundancy, wouldn't matter. You wouldn't be allowed to rely on that for safety. You have to have multiple cascading mitigations against any possible failure.
I want to go through the panel now and ask one single question about connectivity, Internet of Things, and everything that we're undergoing. This revolution, really, the next technological revolution. But before I do that, here's the result of the poll. Do you believe autonomous vehicles will be the most popular mode of transport, or a popular mode of transport in 10 years? 52% say yes. We've got 38% saying not sure, and a very small, teeny tiny 10%. So no, they won't. So there's 10% out there who are sticking to the gear stick. What do you think? This is the question for the panel. What do you think is going to be the biggest innovation in the next decade? I'm going to begin, if I can, with you, Alan. What's the game changer going to be, do you think?
Thanks for beginning with me.
Yeah, it's always nice to start. I really think it is.
I think that probably the biggest game changer is going to be in the area of machine learning. I think the rate of advancement in that area is impressive, and I think with the amount of data and processes that and decisions that need to be taken, that the more data that's fed into these algorithms, the smarter they become and the more preemptive they become. So I think in the next 10 years, how machine learning gets applied will probably be to all aspects, like, medical health and in my area of customer service and IoT and finance, etc. I think that will be the biggest area for improvement.
Okay, Claire, what's the biggest change that you think you're going to see?
I personally think that we're going to be looking at climate action, climate change, and the technologies that will enable that going down the line. The topic of resilience is coming up again and again, and there's no point in having a very high-tech city if it's underwater. So I definitely think climate action, climate neutrality is something that's becoming really important.
John, there's a 10% of doubters out there think you're going to produce a fully autonomous car within a decade. So if it isn't going to be the autonomous car, what's it going to be?
Well, I guess one of the big things we're working on here in Jaguar Land Rover is a vision around destination zero. And this is a concept around zero congestion, zero emission, and zero accidents. I mean, we have technology that can do all those 3 things essentially, regulate traffic, get rid of traffic in the long term through technology on the vehicle and in the infrastructure. In terms of emissions, electrification is the way forward, and then beyond that, it's even further in terms of future technologies, even beyond electrification, and then zero accidents. Can you imagine a world where there's no accidents, no car accidents? I mean, that's possible. It really is possible. It's up to us as a society how serious you want to take it, how much you want to embrace it. And then be looking back on these videos, 20 odd years from now, or whenever the time is. I remember the times when cars and trucks and stuff used to be able to crash into each other. That should never happen, because we have technology to get rid of all that stuff. So that for me would be the big...
Absolutely, yeah. And it's brilliant. I mean, that technology is there, right? Like some of that technology already exists in the vehicles, and it's within the last 2 or 3 years, it's becoming standard. And that's going to really change the landscape. I mean, I may make a joke about it. My car won't let me hit a pole. Now, not that I hit many poles, but I mean, that makes me a better driver because the technology is doing it for me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, and if you think about the changes that will have in the world, I mean, that's going to be huge. So I mean, that's for me is probably the biggest thing that's potentially coming. Hopefully, will come sooner rather than later.
Can I go to you, Bobby? I mean, obviously drones are going to be the next big thing, but what would you say is going to happen next?
So on the technology front, I think, I won't say drones specifically, although obviously I think that's huge. I think robotics in general, and that applies across so many different areas. But AI, to echo what Alan said, if anyone knows what GPT-3 is, AI is about to change a lot of lives with far smarter way of understanding and being able to have very, very smart and intelligent discourse from robot to human. And that's a starting point that paves the way for generational changes and advances in technology that will take probably the next 10 years to play out. And I think the other two things are less tech, but obviously COVID has changed the way people are thinking and the way potentially the people are going to live. And I'm not sure that, COVID, when it does go away, is ever going to go away for good. I think, communities and governments are going to think differently about how society is structured in response to that long term. And then for me, the shorter or medium term big change is regulation. And I think that currently the internet has been divided by China, the United States, and the rest of the world. And that could very well change the way people connect with each other and the way platforms are built. And I think that governments have not done a good job at regulating big tech. I think big tech has done an awful job with its commercial approach, ignoring so many other important issues. And I think that regulation is going to have to step in, possibly led by the EU, to a little bit of breakup, a little bit of change, and a little bit of manners on the tech industry, I think. So I think that shouldn't be a constraint, but it should be a change in balance of power.
Yes. It would appear unfettered growth is not a good thing in any industry, not to mention technology that ends up in all of our hands. Here's a poll, the poll number 4. How many internet devices are you connected to at present? You're all deluded because you're saying under 5%, half of you say. That's not technically true and couldn't possibly be true, because if you started counting them, you'd be probably quite alarmed. Others are more realistic, between 5 and 10, 34%, and 14% say more than 10. And it is becoming a little bit all pervasive. And if I can come to you, Alan, you mentioned self-care. I mean, that's a big developing area that carries a lot of responsibility with us as well, because the technology is getting an awful lot better at telling us what's wrong with us. If there was an Apple Watch on my wrist at the moment, it might even be able to tell me if I'm having a heart attack, if I'm in the right country. So there's a march towards that type of expectation for connectivity, that, if I start having a heart attack, my watch calls an ambulance for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it all points to the being able to recruit the different diagnostic information that's around us all the time. So the information about, your heart monitoring and how that then gets applied to be assessed, and decisions getting taken, and then actions getting taken from those decisions, that whole kind of decision tree are becoming more and more powerful. And in the area that we work in connected homes, oftentimes our homes are sharing a lot of information around what's happening to them. But today, the vast majority of customers end up having to ring a call center to go through that kind of quite elongated process in order for someone to look at the data manually. Whereas what we're focusing on is how you bring all of that data analysis right to the moment when the customer needs the help. So I think being able to rapidly access what's happening in the context, like who the person is, what's happening in their environment, the sort of situation, the criticality of the issue, all of those things need to be kind of considered and then help delivered. And that's definitely where self-care and technical support is headed.
Claire, if I can come back to you, smart and all as we want the city to be, a local authority still has to have the human element, doesn't it? You're not going to be able to get bots to sign off on a lot of the responsibilities that you might have in the local authority. It's a tricky area for you guys to navigate, isn't it?
It is a little bit, because at the end of the day, a lot of our customers, they do want a human voice at the end of the phone. And I know COVID has been quite difficult, whereby our citizens haven't been able to come to the public counters as much. So I suppose what we're trying to do now through CRM is try to really enhance our customer service unit, so that there is, if you want a voice on the other end of the phone, to direct you where you need to go, or also provide the option of using digital technology. So for us, it's a case of trying to do a little bit of both, which from maybe the tech point of view mightn't seem most efficient, but I mean, we do have to be cognizant of serving all of our citizens or citizens of different needs. And some of the things they're looking for can't be solved right now with AI or right now with the chat box. or botting.
Okay, and probably never will be, I would argue, into the future as well. Look, we're going to get to questions in just a minute. So hashtag TechCork20 if you want to tag us on social media. If you have a question for any of our panel, now is the time to get it in, because we've about 10 minutes left on this for me to put those questions in. Here's one of them. John, this is for you. Regarding autonomous vehicles, how do you see this impacting car ownership in the future? Do you see more shared ownership in particular?
Yeah, definitely. I see more shared ownership. It's going to be a key trend. How people actually, use vehicles and use transportation in general. So a lot of it will be down to the customer experience. A lot of it down to individual preferences, demographics, whether urban, rural. So there's so many different factors to the equation in terms of how this is all going to lay out. But definitely, there's going to be a lot more shared mobility services available, certainly in urban areas. But still, I mean, there's still a high percentage of people who want to own their own private vehicle, especially in a COVID world. I think Bobby made the point, which is very relevant. We talk about technology, but look at the lives we're all living in the last 6 months and how that's going to affect us in the longer term in terms of how we travel, where we go, how we use public transport, how we use private ownership, how we adopt private ownership of our own vehicles. So there's a lot of unknowns yet in terms of how this is going to all play out. But I think COVID has definitely started to make people think very, very differently. And that's going to have potentially a huge impact in terms of people's preferences going forward.
Here is one that I think is probably best to put to you first, Claire, and then we'll open it up to the panel. How do we drive connected cities as a national initiative in order to ensure consistency? Because the last thing we want is maybe Dublin gets investment on it, doesn't bring Cork with it, automatically Dublin, not that they need it, is at an advantage to Cork.
Well, already there's collaboration going on to try to solve this issue, and I suppose when you look at an island like Ireland, a lot of the cities have a lot of similarities. We have very similar challenges and very similar opportunities. So there is a forum called the All Ireland Smart Cities Forum, which has representatives looking at smart cities from essentially local authorities from all the cities north and south of the island, and we would work together quite a bit to either look at collaborative projects or I suppose just have that open line of communication and dialogue to talk about issues that maybe need a collective voice, and also to look at solutions that have been implemented in one place and learn from other cities who have gone before us.
I mean, is there leadership in that group? Because the last thing you want is everybody sitting in the room telling each other what's coming, but nobody actually activating it.
It's interesting that we're actually looking at the moment at developing our own strategy for this forum. This started off very much as an informal sharing forum, whereas now we're realizing that there is definitely a role for a collective voice of local authorities, and then trying to look at how we can link in with national government just to make sure that the voice of the city or the county council is heard at a kind of a national level as well.
I mean, look, Bobby, if I can put this one to you, we are in a situation now where we've got an amazing lineup of companies. They're watching us right now, wherever they are, here in Cork and nationally as well. We have the key components of this, but the last thing we want to do is end up following someone else. We want to be leaders in this field. I mean, you're setting a company that you want to be a global leader. Could Ireland be a global leader in smart cities? And if so, how do we manage to pull the strands together from all these disparate people who are working in the right direction?
I don't see why not. I mean, I'd always look at the Singaporean model to see how quickly an entire country can be moved to adopt and embrace the latest in technology on either a trial level in a single city or across the whole market. And look at the UAE as well. There's a number of cities all around the world that have really invested heavily ahead of the curve and in a public-private partnership to make things work. And there's possibly three companies here that so if you look at what we're doing it in cooperation with Galway, and you look at what we could do around the country with the HSE, with government, with local government. You could change the community quickly there, and Ireland should and could be the world leader in this. In fact, as we're speaking now, when we go live in Oranmore will be the largest drone delivery town on the planet. So the answer is not could we are, and we've done it before. Lots of Irish companies have excelled and been the best at what they do. And just look at Jaguar Land Rover in Ireland testing autonomous driving tech. Why? couldn't we, ring fence a big part of a community in our country and allow autonomous cars to be tested, for example? Like, it's not easy, but it's the right thing to do. I think, Ireland has led in many different areas and is the perfect size country to be able to be nimble and politically pretty well aligned to be able to get things done. And we have funds like ISIF, we have a ton of VCs here that are hand in hand working with and cooperating with government funds that could make it happen. So I don't think there's anything in the way of Ireland leading in numerous different categories, and we should seek to do so.
Here's another question. Lots of questions coming in about cars, John. People do like their cars, and I mean, we all want to get to the George Jetson car. And even by saying that, I know that I'm excluding a large part of the audience who are going, "Who's George Jetson?" But John, do you know who George Jetson is? Is it lost on you?
Flintstones, is it? No.
Oh, kind of ballpark. How much are the autonomous vehicles going to cost? I mean, they're going to be more expensive than the Land Rovers that we have out there now.
Broadly speaking, there's two models. One is private ownership, which is right now very, very expensive because you have to put the full sensor set on the vehicle. So cameras, LiDARs, radars, all these sensors have to go in the vehicle. They're not at a cost point right now where it makes it, scale into the broad market for you or me to go in and buy one of these vehicles. So what will happen first is in fleets, when there are things like the Ubers, the Lyfts, the big companies will run major fleets and perhaps use these vehicles for a couple of years and then recycle them or get rid of them. So they're not meant to be sold into private ownership. So we'll see, fleets happening first, and then later on, probably the next 5+ years, more around private ownership will be common.
Another question for you. What type of skills do people need to get into enabling autonomous driving and the steps to get involved? So how do we all go and work for you and Shannon?
It's a big question. So lots of different areas. So it's primarily we're a software engineering site, but I mean, we are hiring folks with skills in data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, cloud services, virtualization, embedded software engineering, mathematics, validation. So lots of different areas. You think about it, to get a car or any vehicle to drive by itself, there's a big journey between the sensors on the vehicle and the services you deploy in the cloud. There's a lot going on in between. So lots of different skills required. And we mentioned safety several times. So cyber security and functional safety is a critical thing for us as well. Very, very high standards around automotive safety integrity levels. So people who have that kind of process background as well in aviation or aeronautics are very, very welcome here as well. So it's a broad range of skills. And typically we're not hiring just from the automotive domain. So it's not just from the other car manufacturers or tier 1 suppliers, but we typically have folks here from mostly software tech companies, and again, I fully agree with what Bobby was saying. I mean, the reason why Jaguar Land Rover is here together with plenty of other FDI companies is because of the skills and the capabilities we have in this country. It's not necessarily about the inherent industries, it's about the skills we have, and Cork is an obvious place for that. So is Limerick and so is Galway. There's a lot going on here in the west of Ireland in terms of FDI companies, in terms of universities and colleges.
Okay, so the roadmap is there. We just have to work it out and interpret it. Claire, here's one question that I'll put to you. Can Cork be the leading smart city in Ireland? We want to do it collectively, where we all move forward together. But is there an opportunity here for Cork to excel?
Look, I'm obviously going to say there of course there is a huge opportunity. You just look at the.
What's not to like? We're good.
I know. Look at the research institutes around us. Look at some of the SMEs around us. Look at some of the large tech companies around us. I mean, even look at we have IT at Cork. That's a very powerful cluster. We have really, really powerful business representative associations. We have a lot of the pieces that we need. So I don't see why not. Now, what we do need to do is we do need to get more organized, and look, we all do need to work together. And hopefully, now that digital has definitely accelerated in the last 6 months due to COVID, it's here to stay, and it's just now about working together to make sure that we can actually take advantage of all of those different opportunities that are out there.
Bobby, if I was to ask you, apart from more and more, which is obviously the center of the world for you right now, what's the big fish? Where do you want to go? Where do you think the smartest of smart cities is going to be?
You mean outside of Ireland? Because
yeah.
I mean,
Cork is the answer there, Bobby. Don't forget it's IT at Cork. The answer was on the tin.
Ballincollig has to be Ballincollig. I know. The dream. So there's outlier cities. So if I say the dream city for us is something like a Mexico City, where you have 20 million people with awful traffic, terrible pollution problems, and an insatiable demand for delivery. So you look at an outlier like that. But of course, the United States is the biggest single cohesive market for online anything, and that one is very attractive because nearly 80% of the population live in suburbs with plenty of room for drone delivery. But I look closer to home. Why isn't Ireland? Why don't we just say Ireland is the drone delivery country that leads the world, and we go everywhere in Ireland, absolutely everywhere. We'll be ready to start that in less than 2 years, and Ireland's the perfect market for it because we have shitty weather, and we have a fantastically commercially astute population that want to wear the green jersey and win. And so why wouldn't it be Ireland? Let's make it happen here.
I cannot wait for the day you do the first drone delivery to my house, Bobby. I'm building up to it. I've interviewed you a few times now. I'm nearly at the stage where I'm demanding it, given that I've heard it so many times. But look, thank you so much for your insights. I wish you the very best of luck with Mana Drone. Thanks to everybody who joined us on the panel this morning. Alan Coleman, the founder of Sweeper, John Cormacan, General Manager, Vehicle Engineering Ireland for Jaguar and Land Rover, and Claire Davis, Digital Officer at Cork City Council. This is the bit where I ask all the panelists to awkwardly wave goodbye as they turn off their cameras. Wave goodbye, everybody. There we go. Very good. I love when I do that. It's tremendous fun. Thank you very much. Mute your microphones as well, because otherwise we'll hear you talking about us. Folks, that is the end of this webinar this morning. We really do thank you for your attendance. To everybody who put something up, hashtag TechCork20. Lots of people got in contact. We really do appreciate that. Don't forget the workshop in the afternoon. This afternoon on IoT is in association with the Nimbus Research Centre. Tomorrow, the webinar is going to be on cybersecurity. It's a cybersecurity track tomorrow, so make sure you do tune in for that. TechSummit.ie has all the details of everything that happens across this week. All going well, we'll talk about the future of education on Wednesday with me back in the chair for the webinar. So thank you to everybody who took part this morning. You've been rock solid as an audience. I've been watching the screen on Zoom. It's almost like we're in the same room as each other, except for the huge geographical distance and a rampant pandemic. It looks like Pat Kenny has had a power cut in his house, which means I now have to hop into the Newstalk studio to take over from 11 o'clock. Will I make it? You'll find out later. But for now, from me, on behalf of everybody in IT at Cork, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you on Wednesday.